All right, y'all online. Let's get after it today. Mike Mooneyham joins us.
We're waiting.
Welcome into the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be something a little bit different. We have talked football. We have talked basketball. Next week, we're going to talk college baseball. You know, we might talk some college baseball today. Yep, we might get into that today. But I'll tell you what, before we get into all of that, you know, since I started this show, people have asked me about, I have a love for professional wrestling. I've been a ring announcer for Palmetto Championship Wrestling. Shout out to my buddies, Ethan Case, out there doing his thing. Also, of course, Shane Dorr, the man behind everything else. He's like the Wizard of Oz. Let me do some work in the ring for them. No, I'm not out there taking bumps, ladies and gentlemen. That era has passed me. It really has. Mr. Savage College Football is in the house with us today. He may be able to take some bumps. I don't know. I bet that I could sling him off a rope and he'd be fine with it. Thrills Mills down the hall. He would probably be up for that too. All right. So we'll have that. But today we're going to talk a little professional wrestling. And if I'm going to talk professional wrestling, I'd like to go to people who know what they're talking about, including the man who writes for the Post and Courier, who I found out today he's been doing this for 55 years. He's been doing some sort of wrestling coverage. I didn't know this gentleman was that old. It's one of those people that when you interview them, you look at it and you're like, man, how does this happen? I mean, because I grew up reading this guy. And then he tells me today he's been doing this 55 years. That makes me think, wow, I must be old. If he's been doing it 55 years, then I've been doing it, reading him that long. So today's going to be a little bit different. We'll have some football stuff later on. We'll talk about the basketball game tomorrow. Clemson plays at Duke. Interesting stat for that game. Stick around for that. Oof. I read this stat today and it was like, how did this happen? Then we've got South Carolina going on the road tomorrow night. I think tomorrow night could be the turning point in the season for the Gamecocks. And people are like, what are you talking about, Rob? Yeah, I'll give you my info on that shortly. But the Royal Rumble is this weekend. And it's okay to like professional wrestling. We've gotten past that. Remember when people would be like, do you like professional wrestling? And you'd be like, I don't know if I want to tell people that I like it or not. I'm not sure. Look, I don't care. I'm into it. It's what I like. And it's a big deal now. And as far as with what the WWE does, the Royal Rumble's this weekend. I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk to Mike Mooneyham. And here's the interview I did with him earlier today as we talked a little wrestling here for the rundown. Thanks for joining the show today, Ben. It's always great to have you.
My pleasure, Rob. Always good being on the show.
All right. So I thought we'd talk a little bit today. We got the Royal Rumble coming up this weekend, but the Royal Rumble is basically a battle royal with a twist. Do you remember your first battle royal that you've seen, and how did that have an effect on you as a wrestling fan?
Yeah, well, I like the concept.
It's not nice, Alan.
That was all Pat Patterson's idea. He was very creative, and he was responsible for a lot of great finishes and a lot of great ideas with WWE early on. But, honestly, I like the concept back when we had regular battle royals back in the day. San Francisco is probably the main city on the map for the battle royal. And they had some really great events. And, every once in a while, even in this territory, we'd have battle royals. And I kind of like the deal with, everybody having to go over the top rope. And it was just something new. So when WWE started it, I think it was in 1988, or 33 years ago now. I was pretty used to the match.
It's still an interesting concept. And, you mentioned Pat Patterson, and he passed away here recently.
Yeah.
Just some of the stuff that I've read about him and his effect on it. is just monumental as far as the things that he put into it.
It really is. And Pat was such a great finish guy. I first remember Pat when I started following wrestling back in the 60s, and he was part of one of the what I consider the greatest tag teams in all of pro wrestling history, the Blonde Bombers, Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens. Those guys were really, really good, and they were best known in California as partners, and then they were rivals, and then they were partners again. But both of those guys could really go. And Ray Stevens, as you know, was kind of like a role model for Ric Flair. But just a super smooth team, great heels. And, Pat was a great worker throughout his career. And then when Vince put him in the front office at WWE, he was even a better creative guy.
You mentioned Pat Patterson being a heel, and I'm from the age group that just remembers Pat Patterson as being one of McMahon's stooges. But I mean, from what I've read and the stuff that I've been able to pull up, I mean, he really was part of a great heel tag team. And that's something that's kind of gone away. It seems now like, especially in the mainstream, you've got guys that are heels for maybe a year or so, and then they flip them, and then they go back to being heels. It's just, you don't really have that big giant heel anymore. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And everything was more long-term back then. Tag teams were well established in all the territories, and it usually wasn't just two guys who were thrown together. They had a long track record, like Pat and Ray. Back then we had teams like the Anderson brothers who teamed for
Flair
years.
Is goofy.
It wasn't,
you're right,
they
Bob.
didn't split up and feud and then start teaming again. I know the Assassins, my favorite mask team of all time, and really one of the greatest tag teams of all time. They were together for 14 years. That's a long run, and they were main eventers in every territory they wrestled in. So nowadays, you're right. The guys might team for a few months and then turn on one another, but really, tag team wrestling doesn't have the effect that it did years ago.
Do you think that's because it just seems like the WWE doesn't care about their tag team division? And I mean, I know they have the Dusty Rhodes tag team tournament in NXT, but I just think Vince McMahon doesn't care about tag teams.
Well, it's always been an afterthought with Vince. He never put too much priority in tag team wrestling, especially since the national expansion. I know his dad was big on tag teams, so Vince really never saw it as a big draw. And it's just something to put on the card to break things up. But no, there's not a lot of emphasis by Vince McMahon on tag team wrestling.
Well, I just think that it seems like that's kind of had a crippling effect for tag teams across a lot of the industry. I mean, I don't think guys grow up in wrestling thinking, hey, I want to be a tag team. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. And I love tag team wrestling. I think I told you before, I grew up in the hotbed of tag team wrestling right here in the Carolinas. And I would say probably 75% of the time, the main event down here would be a tag team match. It wasn't a singles match. In fact, single title matches were very rare in the mid-Atlantic area during the 60s and early 70s. It wasn't until George Scott took over the book in 1973 that an emphasis was put on singles. And then you saw the transition from tag team wrestling main events to single matches. Of course, we had a great array of talent such as Johnny Valentine, Wahoo McDaniel, the Super Destroyer, a young Ric Flair, and a young Ricky Steamboat. So you had a lot of good singles on top. But even then, you had pretty established tag teams. Look at, we had the Anderson brothers. We had Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, Don Kernodle and Sergeant Slaughter, the Briscoes. So we still had tag team wrestling as a dominant force. It just wasn't. It was more on the line with singles matches back at that point.
Do you think that, and I know that the current product's kind of tough to keep up with for all of us, but it seems like the AEW folks are trying to have more tag teams and make it more a part of their show. I don't know if you've been following that or not, but I mean, they got the guys that were at the WWE that, that FTR, I think was their name. And then, and then they've got the Young Bucks and guys like that their focus is being a tag team. And when you watch that, even if you don't really like some of the stuff they're doing, because I'm not into guys, basically killing themselves in a match, but they are trying to tell stories as a tag team, and that's just something you don't see on the WWE front.
Oh yeah, no, AEW absolutely has embraced tag team wrestling a lot more than WWE. You got the Young Bucks, you got FTR, Harwood and Wheeler, great guys who are molded in the same tradition as Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. They've emulated those two, and that's one of the reasons they have Tully as a manager. But those guys are great. You even have Chris Jericho and MJF teaming a little bit. You see a lot of tag team wrestling, and it's good. I mean, it's certainly a lot more high speed and sort of flip flop than tag team wrestling was back in the day. But no, they seem to give a bigger nod to tradition, and that includes tag team wrestling. So I really like that part of All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, and once again, I'm in the camp of they do some stuff that I'm just like, wow, these guys aren't going to be able to walk at 25. So,
oh man, it hurts to watch one of those shows.
It does, and I don't know. I feel like I'm maybe I'm just getting old or too old. And it's so funny.
I understand. Believe me, I feel the same way you do.
Yeah, I get so. I mean, it really makes me cringe to watch some of that stuff. And then you listen to I listen to Jim Cornette's podcast, and he talks about they're all gonna die basically, and he's right. I don't know how they put their bodies through all of that, man. It's just turned up a lot, right?
I just don't see longevity when I watch those guys, and that's why guys back in the 60s and 70s they had long matches, but they couldn't go at that breakneck speed. They would not have survived. Those guys, and plus those guys had to wrestle 6 and 7 days a week. There's no way they could have done all that stuff back then and had a long career. Just no way. No.
You mentioned the 6 or 7 days a week thing. Jim Ross on his latest podcast said that right now with the pandemic, the AEW guys work like 5 days a month if they have a pay-per-view.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this may be something that, we've gotten that may be better from the pandemic, in that you've got guys, they don't go out there and run themselves crazy working 26 days a month. Maybe they can see, hey, we can still put out a good product and work 5 days out of the month. Do you think that's something that may help later on, even as we hopefully get closer to having a vaccine? But you think that's something they may look at, or you think it's going to be, once it happens, it's just going to be house shows on Tuesday night in Anderson, basically?
Yeah, I think those guys are going to, when the time is right, and I don't know, I have no idea when that time might be, but I do think they'll go back to a 3 or 4 day schedule. I mean, it'll never be 6 or 7 nights a week, but it'll be 3 or 4 nights and, a couple of days off, and pretty much similar to the old routine. But there actually could, I mean, it's according to how long this pandemic goes and if there are any after effects. I think initially they could lessen the schedule just a bit, not go back to the full-time deal.
Well, we'll see how that goes. I did have someone ask a question on Twitter. I wanted to throw it your way, and I don't know if you can give us a great answer on this or not. But the gentleman asked me. He says, "I'm 23 years old and I want to wrestle. What is the best track for me to go?" And I was like, "Well, we'll ask Mike. Maybe he knows something we don't." So, what do you think about that, Mike?
Yeah, well, go to a good training school. You're not going to really do it any other way. If you want to learn if you want to learn from the best trainers. And where does this person live?
I think he lives in Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana,
Long way out there, right?
Yeah, Mid-South region.
There you go.
I'm not familiar with a lot of training facilities up there, but you might have to do some traveling. He can look in to see if there are any reputable guys from the business training in that area. But there are a lot of good wrestling trainers around. Dory Funk Jr. in Orlando, Florida. Down here we've got in North Carolina, George South. He's really good. He'll teach you from the ground up and teach you how to do it right. So really, you have to go to somebody established who not only has been in the business, but someone who still has connections in the wrestling business. You're not gonna just go to WWE Tryout Performance Center in Orlando and sign up. You're gonna have to get some experience from someone in the business who can maybe point you in that direction when the time is right.
Yeah, I guess that's the best advice, is to get a good trainer and go after it. But unless
you just want to wrestle on a local independent level, and then I would advise you find somebody in your area who has some wrestling knowledge and experience and who runs a wrestling school, and start there.
I know the Palmetto Wrestling Academy with Ethan Case and those guys with Palmetto Championship Wrestling do it here in the Midlands. But as far as out in Louisiana, I don't know, to be completely honest with you. But the other thing I thought was cool about that is that he reads your column in Louisiana. So the span of the internet, sir.
Yeah, it really does. I get notes from people, really, not just in this country, but even outside the country. Of course, I've been doing this for 55 years almost. So
I refuse to believe you're that old. I'm not buying it.
I refuse to until I get up every morning, and then I say, well, maybe that's true. No, it's really been incredible. I was just talking with someone last night about the column that I do and runs every Sunday in the Post and Courier. And we're going on 32 years. Every week. That's a long run. It's hard to believe it's been that long. And I've been retired 5 years, but still doing the column. Yeah, in wrestling, no one has ever really retired, right?
Right. Well, I've got two more questions for Mike Mooneyham this afternoon here on the Rundown. We appreciate his time with us. As far as the Royal Rumble goes, do you have a favorite Royal Rumble moment? Something that you remember that just stuck out in a Royal Rumble match?
Oh, Flair.
Flair, absolutely. Yeah.
Nothing can compare to that. Shed a tear. That was it, man. That was the deal. I think it was one of Rick's favorite moments too. Just absolutely incredible on so many levels. So yeah, that's an easy one for sure.
Yeah, and I like that one. And then the other one I remember, and I guess it's because of the story afterwards, was McMahon running down there to restart it and blowing both of his quads. I mean, that's just something that just sticks in my head. I mean, Flair comes first, but as far as a moment, it's like, wait a minute, this guy's walking to the ring and blows both of his quads.
I don't think anyone's ever done that before in wrestling.
No one's ever done that. Yeah,
that was memorable.
That's some funny stuff there. We've kind of had like a rebirth of the independent scene. I think here in the past bit, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a damper was put on that by this pandemic. I mean, it's really cut a lot of it out.
Oh goodness, yeah. I mean, it has. We've got a local show coming up here in February, and of course, all the guidelines are being observed. The restrictions, the limited attendance, and things like that. But it's just not the same. You got to admit. I mean, it's not the same, and it's really hurt the business. And I hope maybe by the end of this year that things will be back on track where we'll have live crowds and full attendance and all of that. But I mean, we can't even say that with any with any kind of knowing for sure that that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just a mess. We're all just kind of holding on. Well, I know that I'll be watching the Royal Rumble on Sunday. You're going to watch? I'm sure that you'll watch some of it and maybe do some tweeting, right?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm hoping that we'll have a big surprise. I think there's a chance that maybe Edge could win it and possibly go up and challenge Roman Reigns. That's just a wild guess, but he made the surprise appearance this past week on Raw,
right?
And they're bringing him in for something. I think that would sort of be, to me, that would be a little more interesting than Daniel Bryan, who is the favorite to win the Rumble and go against Roman Reigns at Mania. I think Edge might be the better pick, just to mix things up. Hey, who knows? Maybe Brock Lesnar will show up. We need some kind of big surprise for that show.
Well, I have my weird pick, and when I tell my friends this, they laugh at me. But I like Cesaro. I think that's the Rumble could be the kind of push that he needs, and I think that that would be interesting if he won it. You know.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, there'd be no one more deserving than Cesaro. He's kind of been one of the best workers for the company for the past several years, and just really not given his due. So that would be fine with me. I just, I don't know if that'll be Vince's choice, but he's great. I really like him.
Well, we will see how that goes. Folks can follow you on Twitter by Mike Mooneyham, right?
Yep.
And
that's right.
They can find your article for the Post and Courier every week, right?
Every Sunday. Yep, every Sunday. And in print, I'm usually on the back page, easy to find in the newspaper and online, certainly. And also post a lot of stuff on Facebook, if you like old school results and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool stuff from Mike Mooneyham. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us today on the Rundown, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure as always, Rob.
Mike Mooneyham from the Post and Courier joining us today here on the Rundown. Check out his book, Final Bell, which you can get on Amazon and everything else. However else you want to read your book, it's out there. So great interview there with Mike Mooneyham. I didn't do great, just Mike did great because he's an encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge, and it's nice to have someone talk a little wrestling with us here on a Friday afternoon. We come back. Mr. Savage College Football joins us in studio. We're going to talk, he's a lot younger than I am, so I had him watch some retro wrestling. I want to get his comments on that. So we'll talk about that when we come back. You are listening to The Rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. You guys have a favorite wrestling memory? I'm going to play you mine when we come back. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I'm Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us today. Special thanks to Mike Mooneyham for joining us today. All right, Mr. Savage College Football is in studio with us today. Normally we talk football. How are you doing over there, friend?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for having me.
So you're a lot younger than I am. We're not going to tell people like how crazy younger you are than I am, but I had you watch WrestleMania 3's matchup with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. It's one of the moments when I became a fan, and this line still makes me go back even now when I hear just this.
Look at the stare of the champion against the challenger. The irresistible force meeting the immovable object.
Look at the size of the giant. I mean, Hogan is 6'8".
Andre is 7'5".
There you go. Gorilla Monsoon breaking it down. Just one of the absolute best, in my opinion. And of course, Jesse the Body Ventura. You know, you told me you liked watching wrestling and the John Cena's and guys like that. And this is the first time you've seen the actual match with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. What did you think of it?
So as I love how you first started off. You said how I've grown up watching guys like John Cena,
Yeah.
you know, Randy Orton, and all those people. But I didn't grow up listening to those announcers either, because the announcers that I've listened to were Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler. But Jesse Ventura and Gorilla Monsoon
they just sound like they know what they're talking
they
about.
sound legendary, and I've only
do.
listened to one match commentated by them.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the vibe that you get from them. But what did you think of the actual match?
The match was pretty amazing. I liked how it was where was it at? Madison Square Garden?
No, it was in Detroit at the whatever the name of the city was in the Silver Dome. Yeah, the Silver Dome in Detroit. There you go.
There were over like 93,000 people.
Yeah, that's what they tell you. That's probably closer to 78,000, but they're, you know, everything can get blown up a little bit in wrestling. So 93,000, they'll stick with that. But I mean, it looked like people forever. That's how they shot it. So I mean, it looked like there were just a ton of people there.
It did. And what was even crazier about it was how loud and how into it the crowd was.
Yeah.
I mean, because when it first started out, you know, in the first couple seconds, Hulk Hogan just started going at the Giant, you know, punching him a few times. He tried to go for that body slam and he fell, and everybody was
right.
And Jesse and Gorilla were saying Hulk Hogan looks like he hurt his back, and yeah, I think we might have a new champion. And and then all of a sudden at the end, you know, after Andre controlled most of the match, and we see Hulk hit that famous body slam and the famous leg drop and the 1, 2, 3 count, and everybody was absolutely shocked, and the entire Silverdome went ballistic. And it was just
it's so much different now from what you watched to then. I mean, you had two mammoth guys, and you know, and Hulk Hogan is probably a legitimate 6'7", 6'8", and Andre was probably 6'11", 7 foot tall. So I mean, you had two massive individuals in the ring. But as of nowadays you've got guys that are a lot smaller that are wrestling. So it's just a completely different time. And, you know, and the whole thing with, back in those days, there were a lot of guys that used steroids and everything else. I'm not sure if those two did. Andre the Giant didn't have to. He had a condition that just made him massive, but still it was interesting. I mean, it's the first time you've seen it. And obviously the first thing that sticks out is the announcers though. And the commentary that they put together. I mean, you go back and listen to that, and it just really, really, it just sounds like they're talking about something that's the absolute biggest thing ever. And they're trying to give you that story where you think that you're watching something that is absolutely historic.
It's it's like Texas versus USC in a national title game, if in wrestling form, basically.
Yeah, basically you can go with that. But it was just one of the more iconic matches that I'll remember. And as a kid watching it, it still sticks to me to this day, how great that was. And some of the other matches that were on that card with King Kong Bundy wrestling with little people and stuff like that. You got to watch the rest of that stuff that you couldn't get away with nowadays. There'd be people like shocked and yelling things. Wait a minute, how did that happen? Yeah, there's all of that there, which is kind of neat. And Bob Uecker, of course, the legendary baseball announcer, doing some ring announcing, which was kind of cool. All of that in that set there. All right. Do you have a pick for the Royal Rumble this weekend or not?
Well, I don't know all of the participants.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes it hard to make a pick.
All right. Well, you got 8 seconds. Go.
Okay. Well, then I would like to say that Randy Orton wins it.
There you go. Randy Orton, a good solid pick there. All right. We'll have some more for you when we come back. We're going to talk a little bit. A couple other little things happened today. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. You're listening to The Rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, that wrestling doesn't need any more barbed wire and thumbtacks, Jonathan. Crazy.
Oh, can I talk to the whiteboard?
Sports radio done only the way Fox can do it.
Always something to talk about. There's always controversy.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400.
Welcome back to The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. You know, I wanted to bring this up today. Deshaun Watson, I think we talked about this yesterday. He's requested a trade from the Houston Texans. And I tell you what, he's a guy that, we've talked about, okay, he's going to be someone that has the capability to do some, great things with another team. Second in the NFL as far as completion percentage, just an outstanding player. So Adam Schefter tweeted out something today. New Texans GM Nick Caserio says, before we take a few questions, this is his exact quote. I want to make sure that we're all on board with this so everybody knows I'm not making things up here. Before we take a few questions, organizationally, we want to reiterate our commitment to Deshaun Watson. We have zero interest in trading the player. You realize that he's a person, right? Not just the player. And by the way, the person, Deshaun Watson, was not exactly happy with the fact that you were hired as the general manager and you don't get to determine where Deshaun Watson plays. I don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to sit out or not, but as a general manager, you shouldn't just call him, quote, the player. If you just want to say, look, we have no interest in trading Deshaun Watson, that's fine. But saying the player makes you come across like you're a heartless, gutless individual that looks at your players as, chess pieces. It's not exactly the thing that you want to see there with when you're trying to get Deshaun Watson to quite possibly reconsider. So the people that are out there that are saying, hey, Deshaun Watson is not going anywhere, I'd be stunned if he's not somewhere else. I really and truthfully would be. Now, bear in mind, the national media, and we talked about this the other day, they constantly want to push him to the New York Jets. And you'll notice this with the 4-letter network. They want everything. Well, why wouldn't he want to come to New York? Oh, I don't know, because New York is a gong show. One of the worst franchises in football. I know there's some Jets fans out there, but if they're honest, they'll tell you that. Just saying. You can't just go by exactly that front. And the Jets do have the capital, but they've still got, they just invested in the quarterback that they got from a couple, 2 seasons ago? They're ready to throw that out the window. But that shows you also how getting a quarterback is such a big deal for every franchise. I mean, it really is. The talks of giving up, which I think it's worth it, to be honest with you. But if you told me, hey, I'm going to give up one scenario for the Panthers was they give up 3 first-round picks and Christian McCaffrey for Deshaun Watson. Wrap your head around that for a minute. 2 seasons ago, McCaffrey had over 100 catches and all those yards from rushing too. Was considered the best all-purpose back in football. And they're talking about trading him and 3 first-round picks to get Deshaun Watson. That's what one of those things that came out, the trade scenarios. I don't know how far that's going to go. The Jets are there for the Jets. They're talking about how they're going to have to give up 4 first-round picks. That's a lot. That is a lot for any player. But that's the way the NFL is, man. That's why guys like Tom Brady can play until they're 42, 47, however old Tom Brady is. Same thing goes with Drew Brees. There really is a window in the NFL where they don't want to give quarterbacks time to really and truthfully develop. Either you come in and you dominate and you go, or if you struggle a little bit, they don't really like it, and they're going to send you on your way. So that's why a lot of these old timers, in my opinion, that and crazy science and medicine and nutrition and everything else is there. They have the capability of keeping themselves in the game. That's why Drew Brees, we haven't heard if he's going to retire or not. Why would he? He's going to come back and make $40 million or whatever it is with the Saints. Why not? If you could come back and do your thing and still he put up pretty good numbers this year. In the playoffs, he looked a little anemic. But other than that, it was still Drew Brees. So I think that's the big thing in the NFL. Everyone wants that quarterback, and they're willing to pay top dollar for it. 803-978-1832. If you were a general manager, would you give up 4 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson or 3 first-round picks? If you're the Panthers, would you give up the 3 first-round picks and Christian McCaffrey or Teddy Bridgewater? Be interesting to see Watson and McCaffrey together. That would be kind of cool. I don't know if the cap space and everything can make that happen, but we shall see. And you know what? If I'm the new team and I'm going after Deshaun Watson, I'm going to want him to sign a different contract. He's got 3 years left on his contract. I'd want to tie him up for at least another 2 years under contract anyway. That's kind of the route that I would go. We'll take your calls on that at 803-978-1832. Jonathan online loves what the Bills have done with Josh Allen. That's another example. Josh Allen plays well. What happens? Oh, great. The Bills start making the playoffs again. It's not rocket science in the NFL, man. Have a quarterback that can throw the ball, keep you in games, have somebody to protect that quarterback, and then have somebody else to rush the passer. Ta-da! You start winning games. Not that crazy, to be completely honest with you. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you want to join us here on the rundown this afternoon on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Final show of the week. By the way, if you missed the interview with Mike Mooneyham earlier, that is up for you. will be up for you later on at on the podcast. Appreciate the folks checking out the podcast and sending me messages on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good with dumb stuff I said throughout the week. One night it's like Sunday dinner and my phone's going off. I'm like, what is that? And apparently I said something stupid on Tuesday and it was brought back to me on Sunday evening. So thanks for correcting me, you folks that listen to the rundown. Oh, man. If you want to call up with your Royal Rumble pick, we'll take that too. We'll stick with the stuff with Deshaun Watson. Also, some sad news today. Former Temple coach John Chaney has passed away. Chaney, one of the, I remember John Chaney with that Temple zone. He was that Temple zone was just different. Of course, he told John Calipari he would kill him. Remember that. That was some great stuff. Let's go out to the phones really quick here. Welcome to the rundown. Good afternoon.
How you doing, Rob?
Hey, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, doing all right. I was calling about the Deshaun Watson. I'm a Dolphin fan.
Yeah.
And for a long time, if the Panthers would have been around when I was younger, I'd probably be one of them. But anyway,
right.
I think they got a lot to offer. Because far as McCaffrey, I think they want if they get a quarterback and a first-round pick and some other picks, they might could do something like that. But McCaffrey and 3-round picks and a running back that line down there, I mean, they can't block for who they got now. So that's, I mean, that don't seem like it would work too good. But and I'm like you, ESPN and them want to go to Jets. They want the Jets in New York to win so bad they can't stand it.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it really is. Everything is, oh, well, the Jets and the Jets this or the Giants that or the Knicks this or the Knicks that. There are other franchises besides New York. I know that you have to cater to the big markets there, but the reality is that other places have teams. Someone needs to email that to them and let them know.
And I mean, you don't even have to bring up the taxes part, but
yeah.
Unless you're the one getting the paycheck. But anyway, I just wanted to call and put my 2 cents in.
Hey, I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much for joining us today. There we go. So he thinks that would not work out well for them, but I think Houston's a mess. A mess. That's just my opinion. All right. Quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the week here on the rundown. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. Jonathan, stop being ignorant. It's not a banana hammock. It's not what it is. It's a weightlifting outfit. I don't know. You wear a banana hammock. I don't know what that is, but that's not what I'm going to be wearing. So stop with the nonsense. No, you don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't post that nonsense. You have no clue what it is. It's not oh my goodness. Insane, man. Okay. 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you want to join us here on the Rundown this afternoon on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, we're talking a little bit about the stuff with Deshaun Watson. Apparently, the general manager referred to him as the player, not going to trade the player. Just, I know it sounds silly, but insane that you should do that. Brock says, I feel like I'm in the line at DMV when it comes to waiting for Beamer to complete a staff. That's because every time that Beamer thinks he has his staff completed, someone else leaves. That's why it seems like it's so long. And everybody's looking to see who's going to be the next running back coach for South Carolina. Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. And I don't know where Shane Beamer's going to go, but it seems like we've been trying to fill out this coaching staff forever. Well, you know, the sad thing is that we're, you know, when we come back in on Monday, we'll be in February, which means we're close to spring football. Yes, we are there for that. So that's going to be interesting too. All right. So one final thing before we get out of here today that I thought was interesting. Pat Mahomes taken in the NFL draft. Make sure I've got, yeah, people that drafted him ahead of Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of interesting. Number one in that draft in 2017 was Myles Garrett. He's been a pretty good defensive end for Cleveland. He almost tried to kill Mason, was it the Pittsburgh backup quarterback? But other than that, okay. Mitch Trubisky in Chicago. What a disaster he's been. Solomon Thomas, the defensive end, was picked third by San Francisco. Leonard Fournette, he got picked by Jacksonville, and you know, he's not playing with him now, but he'll be playing in the Super Bowl this weekend. Fournette's still a pretty good running back. Corey Davis at Tennessee, the wide receiver there. Jamal Adams, the safety for the Jets, who they eventually traded. Mike Williams, the big wide receiver from Clemson, still with the Chargers. Christian McCaffrey at 8. And then number 9, Cincinnati takes John Ross, the wide receiver there. And then Pat Mahomes at number 10. Marshawn Lattimore, the cornerback, goes at 11. Deshaun Watson goes at 12 to Houston. Man, so in theory, the Bears had a chance to get Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes in the 2017 draft. And how did that work out for them? Not so much. They ended up with Mitch Trubisky. Oof. Not very good at all. Some other names in that draft that were pretty good. O.J. Howard, pretty good player there. Drafted he was drafted 19th overall. So, yeah, there's that. A couple other names as we come along here. TJ Watt picked 30th by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He may end up being the defensive player of the year this year. That may happen. The draft is just so interesting, though. Dalvin Cook picked 41st. Great running back in that draft. And then you go downhill from there. But I think it's interesting when you look back at the draft and sometimes how people just miss on prospects. I want to know who in the Chicago Bears organization says, you know what? Mitch Trubisky is going to be a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson. They're going to get at least 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, but they're going to waste that. They wasted their first-round pick on Trubisky. That's why I kind of laugh when people are like, oh, well, this is a done deal on this prospect. Really? I don't know until they get on the field anyway. But if you watch Mitch Trubisky in college, he wasn't exactly that impressive. Now, he may have done great in the underwear Olympics up there, where everybody's running around in their drawers, throwing footballs and everything. He may have done great with that. But actually on the field, he didn't really have much. He really didn't. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call if you want to join us here on The Rundown, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, around the world on the iHeart Radio app. If If you'd like to join the show today, you have a couple more minutes here. Don't forget, Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk. The czar of Clemson Sports is up next. There's a college football move that might be in the mix. Alabama may be losing one of their assistants, making sure their cornerbacks coach Carl Scott is expected to be the next defensive coordinator at Maryland. So talk about a staff that's in transition this year. It's down at Alabama. They've got tons of guys that have left the program and have gone somewhere else. So that's interesting too. And how Nick Saban, he just continues to crank out great seasons, even though it seems like every year he loses somebody. I mean, he really does. So interesting stuff there. Monday on the show, we're going to start talking some college baseball a little bit. This weekend, you've got South Carolina and Clemson opening up their college baseball season as far as practice goes. And, hey, we're basically, 3 weeks out, essentially, or 2 weeks out next week from the big rivalry matchup between Clemson and South Carolina. I remember that last year because it was the last sporting event that I was able to go into before everything with the pandemic struck. The last real sporting event where, you could walk up and, go to the concession stand or whatever. But I remember being at that game and it was really sunny. It was down at the Firefly Stadium. And looking back on it now, it's like, man, the sporting year has been terrible since then. Just terrible. Everything's condensed and just not very good. But we're going to get some college baseball, it looks like, this season. So I don't know. They've got different regulations out for each school, and it kind of goes along with how the conference wants to go. So that's some interesting stuff there. But college baseball in the next couple of weeks. All right. Don't forget, of course, podcast will be up this afternoon. About 5 o'clock, we'll have that up for you with the interview with Mike Mooneyham. Be sure to check that out. You can also watch the podcast watch the show on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. It's right there for you. People responding over there on Twitter and YouTube and everything. Appreciate you guys. I tell you what, it's going to be an interesting weekend with the Royal Rumble. Going to rain on Sunday, so might make some soup. Sit in the house when it's going to be cold and rainy. Be a good thing to watch the Royal Rumble on Sunday night. All right, so Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk is next. He is the czar of Clemson Sports. Don't believe me? Ask him. He'll tell you. He's on the vast Clemson Sports Talk radio network from everywhere from here in Columbia to 100.1 The Fan in Florence, also 920 AM in Manning. So be sure to listen to him or just on the iHeartRadio app. You can tweet at him at Clemson Sports. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. Teddy Hefner was not feeling well this morning. He'll be back hopefully on Monday as talking sports here on Fox Sports Radio. Check that out from 9 until noon. All right, jacked up for this weekend. By the way, basketball tomorrow. Clemson plays at Duke. Tip-offs at noon. And then the Gamecock basketball team. By the way, Clemson's like 6-41 overall at Duke. Their last win there was 1994, 1995, something like that. Crazy stat there. South Carolina can get right playing a Vanderbilt team this weekend. They go on the road. Tip-off in Nashville is at 8:30 on Saturday night. So you got 2 basketball games tomorrow you can jump into, and then the Royal Rumble on Sunday. That sounds like a great weekend. All right, thanks for joining us on the show. We appreciate it. We will see you on Monday.